888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. We're talking about the significance of the raid of 4 locations of President Trump's personal lawyer. The press secretary was asked about that today at her daily presser. We're also talking about the release of the James Comey book and his book tour and the criticism of the tour by several former agents who used to have a great deal of respect for him. But first, the biggest U.S. Navy force since the Iraq invasion, according to Time magazine, may be heading towards Syria. The Times of London reports that the Navy is sending a total of 10 warships and 2 submarines into the Mediterranean Sea. Still, we don't know what the president intends to do. But he intends to do something. He's drawn a line in the sand. And he intends to do something. Now, we're going to be getting into, as I mentioned, the Comey book and the ramifications of Michael Cohen, who's said to be under a criminal investigation, in just a minute. But first, Charlize Theron is an actress, a very good actress. She is considering leaving the country for the sake of her black children, according to an article in the May issue of Elle. She was talking to Chelsea Handler, and Theron was talking about the 2 black children she's adopted, one 2.5, one 6 years old. Quote, being raised during the apartheid era in South Africa made me so hyper-aware of inequality and human rights. Of course, I have 2 black kids, but that was always something I was passionate about. I don't even know how to talk about the last year under our new administration. End of quote. She continues, but racism is much more alive and well than people thought. We can't deny it anymore. We have to be vocal. There are places in this country where if I got a job, I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't travel with my kids to some parts of America, and that's really problematic. Close quote. Quote, there are a lot of times when I look at my kids and I'm like, if this continues, I might have to leave America because the last thing I want is for my children to feel unsafe. Close quote. I want them to know who they are. I want them to be so effing proud of who they are. Building confidence for them right now is an oath I made to myself when I brought them home. They need to know where they come from and be proud of that. But they're going to know that it's a different climate for them than it is for me, and how unfair that is. If I can do something about that, of course I'm going to. End of quote. Okay, Charlize. Thank you for your concern. Thank you for your passion. Could you be a little more specific? Racism is more alive and well than people thought. Can you give me exactly what you mean? You mean because Trump became president? A man who wants to give urban parents vouchers so they can take their kids out of bad, underperforming government schools? A man who wants to do something about illegal immigration, particularly unskilled illegal immigration that threatens jobs posed by American black and brown workers living in the inner city. You know, the kind that you presumably care about. I've talked to you about the study by George Borjas, the Harvard economist, who says there's no question that unskilled illegal immigration poses competition to jobs and puts downward pressure on those wages that otherwise would have been occupied by inner city workers, or whose salaries would have otherwise been hired by inner city workers. So this racist wants to do something about that? Remember O'Malley, Martin O'Malley, the former mayor of Baltimore, former governor of Maryland, after the church massacre in Charleston? He was talking about racism in America, and then one of the pundits had the temerity to turn to him and say, well, what do we ought to do? What should we do about this racism?
We've been talking about it in the context of mental health and guns, but the president also talked about it in terms of the history of race and racial violence towards blacks. To what extent do you think that this was also something that gets at the core of some racial history that we still have?
I mean, from the reports I read, and let's be honest with one another, the facts are still evolving here. I mean, it would appear that the racial motivation was certainly a big part of what happened.
How do we address things like that?
We do it.
What do we do about it, Mr. Mayor, the man, Mr. Former Governor, the one who wants to become president? What do we do about it? How do we address it? Okay, you identified it. What do we do about it, sir?
We do it by acknowledging the racial legacy that we share as Americans, and I don't know exactly how we address this, Walter. I mean, look, we as Americans all share a very painful racial legacy, and we need to acknowledge it, and we need to take actions to heal it. But I don't think anybody's figured out the magic solution to that. We have to.
Charlize Theron, quote, I don't even know how to talk about the last year under our new administration, end of quote, meaning we're just going so further back in race relations. But Andrew Young, the man who marched with MLK, apparently had a different point of view just a few days ago.
There does seem to be a real gulf, too, between the way whites and blacks Americans view this. You see black Americans much more likely than white Americans to think we're backsliding in race relations.
Well, that's true, and yet it's true that they think that, but it's not true that it exists.
Not true that it exists. Denzel Washington identified a much bigger problem, Charlize Theron. If you really want to help the black community, focus on something that really matters. How about this?
Well, it starts in the home. You know, if the father's not in the home, the boy will find the father in the streets. Yeah, I saw it in my generation and every generation before me and everyone since. It starts in the home. You know, if the streets raise you, then the judge becomes your mother and, you know, and prison becomes your home.
And Charlize Theron adopted 2 black kids who presumably needed parents. 73% of black kids raised without dads. Tupac Shakur.
And I hate saying this because white people love hearing black people talk about this. I know for a fact that had I had a father, I'd have had some discipline. I'd have had more confidence. Your mother cannot calm you down the way a man can. Your mother can't reassure you the way a man can. You know, my mother couldn't show me where my manhood was. So you need a man to teach you how to be a man.
Quote, being raised during the apartheid era in South Africa made me so hyper aware of equality and human rights. Of course, I have 2 black kids, but that was always something I was passionate about. I don't even know how to talk about the last year under our new administration because racism is much more alive and well than people thought. Which people thought that? Which ones have now awakened? Could you just enlighten us? But racism is much more alive and well than people thought, says Charlize Theron. We can't deny it anymore. We have to be vocal. There are places in this country where if I got a job, I wouldn't take it. I wouldn't travel with my kids to some parts of America, and that's really problematic. Why don't you tell us where? That way, other people could avoid the same places. Be helpful. Is it a state? Is it a city? Is it a county? Can you talk to us about where you wouldn't go if you had a job? After all, if it's so problematic that you wouldn't go there for fear that your children might be hurt, don't you think it would be helpful to tell other people so we could be warned as well? Come on. 888-971-SAGE, 888-971-7243. Sarah Sanders was asked about Michael Cohen, who is reportedly under a criminal investigation. All that's coming up, 888-971-SAGE. I am Larry Elder. Do not leave town.
Call in now and join the